Having a good pair of studio monitors is like having a proper pair of glasses, and if you're as nearsighted as I am, you would know exactly what I mean. You don't know what you're missing out on until you try it, and then everything in the world, or in this case in audio, just seems so much more clear. So with that said, today we're going to be comparing two very popular sets of studio monitors, the Yamaha HS7s and the Kali Audio LP6s. And just a disclaimer, I'm not like an acoustic physicist or anything by any means, but I've used the HS7s for a very long time and wanted to talk about how I felt the LP6s compared with them. First, we're going to go ahead and take a look at their specs and build, starting with the Yamaha HS7. This is Jerry. Yes, he has a name. Now, Jerry has been with me since 2014, like spring of 2014. So I've had him for like like a long time. Taking a look at the HS7s, it has a 1-inch dome tweeter and a 6.5-inch woofer. By comparison, the Kali Audio LP6s have a soft dome tweeter that's also 1 inch, and again, a 6.5-inch woofer. And I think it's interesting that with the white LP6s and the black HS7s, they kind of look like an inverse of each other almost. Both the monitors do come in black and white. The Yamaha HS7s also came in like this limited edition gray color, but to my eyes, it kind of looked like a black HS7 that didn't have enough contrast on it. When we look at the frequency response of each speaker, on paper, they do have quite a difference. So when it comes to the low ends, plus or minus 3 dB, the Yamaha HS7s go down to about 55 Hertz, and the Kali LP6s go down to 47. When we take a look at the actual frequency response graphs of both speakers, from what I can tell, the LP6s are a bit more flat across the range. The HS7s are generally quite flat too, but they do have this boost in the mid-range where you might find a lot of lead elements and vocal elements and stuff like that. We'll talk about the effects of that later. Taking a look at the controls, the Yamaha HS7s are quite limited with the amount of controls that you have. It does have a basic room control switch on it that just takes it down at around 500 Hertz by up to 4 decibels. Then there's a high trim up and down, which if you've ever listened to the HS series, God bless you if you try to turn the high trim up. And they are rear ported monitors as well, which I mentioned because regarding the room control, something hilarious that you'll find in the Yamaha HS series manual is that it recommends that the speaker is 1.5 meters away from any wall. Hypothetically, in an ideal scenario, you're like a third of the way into a room, and let's say your speakers are just 40 inches apart, which really isn't that much. Your room would have to be at least 13 by 15 to accommodate that. I really don't think they need to be quite that far away, especially for the 7s, because they don't go that low anyway. I would just focus on putting it in the most ideal place you can, try to treat the room as best as you can, just as I would with any other speaker. All right, now with the LP6s, they have this awesome dip switch thing going on in the back. You can tell that they're acknowledging that a lot of people are going to be using this in a home studio environment because there's so many variations of what kinds of situations you might be in if you're in a home studio. So they have stuff for if it's on stands, if it's not on stands, how far away it is from the wall, if it's directly on the table, if it's on a console shelf. So that is awesome to me and a huge plus about getting the LP6s for a home studio. Another great thing is the front bass port. So any extraneous low-end energy and air is going to be pushed out the front rather than the back, which is nice because if you are close up on a wall, you would rather have that energy coming towards you and not towards a corner or towards a wall, which might give you some boundary issues and just some low-end suffocation. As far as raw build quality goes, so just the way it kind of looks, feels, and is put together, I think I would prefer the HS7s. They're more dense and they feel less cheap. I do have 2 asterisks for both brands. So I have actually owned 3 Yamaha HS7s. This is Jerry, again, hi Jerry. Jerry was the first Yamaha HS7 that I bought. After I bought Jerry, I bought another one, which I had named Ben. Ben and Jerry, get it? Okay. After about a year of owning Ben, I started having this weird static issue. I don't think I had any kind of warranty or anything, so I think what we just had to do was put it on eBay for parts. That said, I don't think anybody else has had that issue before, so I wouldn't expect it, but it's just something that I do have to mention. It all worked out because after we sold Ben, I was able to buy Tom and Jerry. Okay, moving on. My caveat for the LP6s. So, this is weird, But when I got them brand new from Sweetwater, when they arrived, the LED on the left speaker flickered and then just went out. Now, my initial worry was that the speaker just wasn't powering on. Thankfully, it wasn't the case. It was just the LED. Now, I'm stubborn, and also it just took a while for them to get to me, so I did not want to return them. So I emailed Kali Audio to see how serious of a repair it might be, or if it might be an easy fix. And they did mention that there's a little wire for the LED that can get knocked loose. I messed with that, did not change anything. So what I ended up doing with the left speaker was I kept the LED wire plugged in just in case anything changed in the future. Here's where it gets weird. When I started filming this video, I took the LP6 into a different room to shoot some B-roll footage. After putting it back on the stand, I saw the LED starting to work more. And after about a day, just keeping it plugged in, it works now. Obviously, this isn't nearly as severe of an issue as I had with the HS7 because that was a static thing that I couldn't just resolve by myself, but it is something that I wanted to point out. Other than those things, I think the general build quality of both monitors is fine, and I think I encountered in both situations kind of rare problems. All right, so now that all of that hullabaloo is out of the way, I'm going to talk about my experience with both, which is really going to be focusing on the differences that I noticed coming from the HS7s to the LP6s. So with the HS7s, like I said, I've owned them for a long time through high school and college and stuff. And with those, that was the first time that I felt confident that my mixes could translate. Even in a not very ideal room, I felt like, okay, this is way better than crappy desktop speakers and home theater speakers and whatever that I've been using before. Huge step in the right direction. Earlier, I mentioned that the frequency response of the HS7s is a little bit more mid-range focused around that 1K area. So something that these really excel with is being able to hear all kinds of clarity and detail with vocals or a lead center guitar if you're doing progressive metal. So that's what I really like about the HS7s, is that real mid-range focus. Something that I've found to be a weakness of the HS7s is that when it comes to the details of really small background elements, so delays and reverbs, and what kind of reverb did they use on the vocals, and how is it panned, and how compressed is this? Can you tell how much compression there is? I've always had to keep a pair of headphones with me for those kinds of details to really analyze them, and even then sometimes they can still get kind of lost depending on the pair of headphones I grab. With the LP6s, first of all, when I listened to them for the first time, maybe a couple years ago, because my brother got a pair, I was honestly blown away by how good they sounded, and how when I went from a mix that I mixed on my HS7s and on my headphones and then listened to it on the LP6s, I was like, oh my god, I didn't realize how much stuff I needed to fix. How have I not been hearing this? I was really amazed at the level of detail and transparency that I could hear with them. That's something that I've noticed with any really high-end speakers. So I've been in studios that'll have the far field Genelecs and also near field Genelecs. Something that you'll notice if you listen with that class of speaker with also a very dead treated room is that instead of things feeling like a conglomerate of sound like they can feel when they're compressed and in an MP3 or just listening through earbuds and stuff, it starts to feel see-through. Instead of sounding like a band, it sounds like a bunch of instruments and kind of breaks things down. I feel like I actually get a little bit of that transparency here with the LP6s. So for example, there's a song that I've been mixing for too long because I'm bad. I was listening to one of the mixes that I felt like I was starting to get really refined with the HS7s. And then when I got the LP6s, I put them up and I was listening and I was like, wow, these guitar tones are terrible. And there's a bunch of little nicks and things that I needed to edit out that I had completely ignored somehow or completely not even noticed. As an example for a song that's not mine, I was listening to A Cruel Angel's Thesis, which is the theme song for Evangelion, and the vocal harmony sounded much more transparent to the point where it's oh, I can hear someone right over here is a little bit out of tune and stuff like that. And that's something that for me really impresses me out of a $300 pair of speakers. With that said, I will say I've had more hearing fatigue with the LP6s than I've had with the HS7s, which yes, very much surprised me. I thought the HS7s and the HS series was known for being quite brittle, especially with the 7s and the 5s. The LP6s aren't brittle, but there's just something about the really high end of frequencies that maybe I wasn't getting from the 7s that I'm just not used to yet. But I have had a little bit more of that hearing fatigue and noticed myself needing to take more breaks or listen at lower volumes, which you should be doing anyway. A lot of people have already made videos about this topic, but this wave guide here on the LP6s is amazing. It widens the sweet spot, which is very useful. It obviously helps with like the sense of space and where things are, but I think as a result, it helps to separate all the instruments and make everything feel very transparent, like I was saying earlier. Obviously, we're not going to get through a video about the LP6s without talking about this hiss. Here's my thoughts. I do notice it, but it's not that bad, and it doesn't negatively impact my workflow or my comfort really in any way, shape, or form. Coming from the HS7s, they don't have this issue. Basically, the HS7s, they get more of this white noise or hiss as you turn the volume up. So if it's cranked all the way, then you'll have a little bit of like a sound, but you don't need to do that. So you can just keep them low, get most of the volume out of your computer and your audio interface, nothing. With the LP6s, if they're all the way down, so the volume is off, you won't have anything. And if you put your ear real close to the speaker, you'll hear it go, and it'll just cut. But then as you pass that 0 point, you'll hear that hiss come back on and it'll go up. If you are in a dead silent room, yes, you will notice some white noise. And I mention that because I had a gaming PC for a while, and when that was there, I really didn't notice the noise at all. But when I got the new M1 Mac Mini, which is actually like dead silent, when it's the dead of night and there's no other noise around me and my refrigerator and HVAC aren't being annoying, this hiss is the only thing that I hear if I'm not watching a video or listening to a song or doing whatever. So I don't think most people are going to notice it, but it is more noticeable than what you would get on the HS7s, because again, that one has a progressive thing, and so I'd feel like the noise would be equal if the HS7s were past halfway on, which I haven't needed them past like maybe 4 little ticks past 0, if that. So which one is probably going to be right for most people? I have to recommend the LP6s. With their feature set, the more wide range and clarity that they provide, and the price point, they're going to be right for pretty much anybody trying to get into home audio, and I don't think there's many, if any, other speakers that come close to what they give you for the price. The big reason for me that I would say this, as far as even just quality is concerned, is that the LP6s, in my testing and A/Bing, they're more transparent across the whole frequency range, so I don't feel like small elements get lost nearly as much. The waveguide is sick, and the front porting is very helpful if you're not in an ideal space, which if you're buying speakers at this price point, most likely you are not in an ideal space. I think if you're shopping for studio monitors, you should do your best to listen and read reviews in whatever ways you can. But in my opinion, after someone who has owned the HS7s for years, it's not just a novelty thing. I really do feel that the LP6s provide me with more detail and clarity that is helpful across all the genres that I work with. With that said, I am not getting rid of my HS7s for 2 reasons. One, they've been with me through so much of my life and have made a huge difference on myself as a musician in a lot of ways, so part of it's an emotional thing. Number 2 is that when I was A/Bing them, they still have their strengths, especially with those mid-range elements and just certain other things I might not be picking up as well or noticing with the LP6s. So if I can ever get to the point where I can have 2 sets of monitors and have the space for that, I would be happy to. I think they would look cool and also be very functional and helpful that way. Kali in general makes really impressive speakers, and if you want to check out more of their stuff, they do have the IN range. They recently released the IN5. It's a 3-way speaker. My best friend has them, and they are amazing. They sound really, really good. So in a very unexpected twist in the LP6 versus HS7s, the winner is the Kali Audio LP6. If you're shopping for studio monitors, I hope you found this user review informative and helpful. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. That helps me know whether I did a good job. And if you have any suggestions or other points you want to bring up to me, obviously that's what those comments are for, and please let me know. I have been Matt, and thank you very, very much for watching. Bye.